Let's move on to NATO expansion now. And Russia has warned that Finland's move to join the military alliance will not help the stability or security of Europe. In fact, the Kremlin responded as NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that the country would be warmly welcomed into the alliance. For many years, Russia has been opposed to the idea of any expansion of NATO member states. NATO currently made up of 30 members. Most of them are in Europe, but they sit alongside Canada and the United States. 19 European countries are not included in NATO. And to date, the focus is on Russia's neighbours, Sweden and Finland, which both look poised to join. According to some polls, more than 70% of Finns are now in favour of joining NATO. That's a big change from last time the question was asked back in 2017, when only 21% supported the idea. Well, it's a big change of heart. Let's talk more about it now. Joining us from Helsinki is Jussi Halla-aho, who chairs Finland's Foreign Affairs Committee. Good to see you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on Sky News.
Good afternoon. Hi.
As recently as February of this year, only 50% of Finns were in favour of joining NATO. Talk to me about the escalation of urgency that has led you to this point today.
The feeling in Finland is certainly that by invading Ukraine on the 24th of February, Russia crossed some crucial red lines. It showed itself to be a country that doesn't respect international law or its own obligations or the sovereignty of its neighbors, and a country that is ready to use brutal military force without provocation and has absolutely zero respect for human life or basic human norms. This new reality has forced Finns to reassess or reconsider some of our long-held traditional ways of thinking. It has been customary to think that we can stay out of trouble and we can get along with Russians by not provoking them. But now we see that Russia can be a very aggressive and dangerous neighbor even without being provoked.
Yeah, to be clear, there has been no direct threat to Finland from Russia, but I think as your foreign minister put it earlier today, the thought in Finland is, what if this happened to us? You do share an 800-mile border with Russia, and I just want to get an insight into weighing up the pros and cons of this decision, because Russia have reacted saying that this move is seriously damaging to your country's ties with Russia. In fact, it damages the maintenance of stability and security in the northern European region. Russia have said there will be consequences from your application even, not even your admission to the alliance.
Russia is certainly against the NATO expansion, but the question is why they are against it. Are they really scared that somebody will attack Russia? Of course not. They don't want NATO to expand because that reduces the possibilities of Russia to have influence in their neighboring countries. That is to limit their sovereignty. Finland, unlike many other European countries, has still a strong national defense. But the question is that I think what Finns are seeking from a NATO membership is a deterrence. We want to avoid a conflict with Russia in the future. Well, I hope I answered at least some part of your question.
Yeah, you did. It's very much about self-preservation. Finland has a very strong partnership with NATO, but if Russia were to come for Finland, of course, not being a part of NATO doesn't mean, not being part of NATO means that they won't automatically come to your aid. And obviously that is what Finland is worried about now. We're learning a lot about, as you said, your country's military capabilities. You've maintained your own armed forces as a precaution to being a neighbour with Russia. Conscription is mandatory in your country. You're pretty well prepared if something like we are seeing in Ukraine happens in your country.
Yes. Well, I think the war in Ukraine has taught all of us some lessons. The first is that everybody has overestimated the conventional military capabilities of Russia. They seem to be unable to defeat a prepared and motivated enemy defending their own country. And I believe that most Finns are more or less confident that we would be more than capable of defending ourselves in a hypothetical military conflict with Russia. But as I said earlier, we want to avoid such a conflict because we can see in Ukraine that when Russia faces a military defeat, they are prepared and willing to kill and destroy everything around them and inflict terrible damage on civilian population and civilian infrastructure. And this is naturally something that we want to avoid. So this is why we believe and we feel that we need a strong deterrence so that Russia doesn't get any ideas in the future about Finland.
Jussi Halla-aho, really good to talk to you. Chairs Finland's Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you so much for your insight into that big move for your country today, this acceleration of Finland's application to join the NATO alliance. I just want to bring you an update from the United Nations in relation to the war in Ukraine. The UN Refugee Agency is saying that the number of refugees fleeing Ukraine has now passed the 6 million mark. That is 6 million people fleeing from Ukraine since the beginning of this war with Russia in February. That's quite a staggering number, 6 million people leaving Ukraine because of Russia's invasion.